What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Ron here. If you're stopping by the channel for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel. And while you guys are at it, go ahead and smash that like button. I really would appreciate that. Now, guys, I've received a lot of messages from you, especially in the last several months. But most recently, I've gotten a lot of questions about the banks. What's going on with the banks? Is my bank FDIC insured? Are credit unions safe? I'm trying to understand what to do with my cash. Should I take my cash out of the bank? So I'm getting questions like that, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Federal Reserve, interest rates, and the future of money and potentially a cashless society, a cashless system going forward. But I received a lot of messages recently about a very mysterious, loud boom.
Boom like that, I just assume they're flying something around.
The mystery boom heard from North County all the way into Mexico, and even the mayor of San Diego got in on the action. But again, the military says it wasn't them.
And I'm getting more and more messages from you guys on this, so I definitely wanted to touch on that subject because more and more questions are coming in about this. And I actually stumbled across this really interesting interview, and this guy, he was talking about the future of money and a cashless system and an evolution of society to be somewhat along the lines of the Hunger Games. And so the question is, well, how do you control the people the way they did in the Hunger Games? So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that later in this video. But before we do, I definitely wanted to share some of these clips with you guys on examples of this boom, because evidently this loud boom that you've been hearing, and if you haven't heard about that, definitely comment down below if you haven't heard about it. But if you have heard it, let us know in the comments what state or city, if you want to put that much detail in it, but the state is fine. Just let us know what state you're in where you're hearing this mysterious boom, because I did a little bit of research, and there's a number of different states and cities that have reported this at different times, and it's not even related to weather. You know, it's many of these instances have taken place where this loud boom just comes out of nowhere, and it might be just a loud boom for like 3-4 seconds in some instances, rattling houses and chimneys. And it could be clear as day outside, no overcast, just a blue, beautiful day. And all of a sudden, this loud, earth-shattering boom. And so it's not thunder. It's not some firework. It's not fireworks or anything like that. But let me know what you guys think that this is. Here's a clip.
Idiot is rude. Yo, what the was that?
Similar loud noises and vibrations were heard last year in South and Central Jersey. The source of those noises, still a mystery.
I was just laying up in my room, and I just hear like a bunch of shaking and like a boom outside, and I was confused what it was.
The source remains a mystery.
And what's most interesting is people are hearing it and reporting it from up north around the Ringwood area, down as far as Norwood.
One person saying, heard a loud noise that made us literally search the horizon for a mushroom cloud. We thought we were being bombed.
Boom.
It is a story that had many of you chiming in online. Stone Oak neighbors trying to figure out the noise that's keeping them up at night. KENS 5 reporter Alicia Neaves is following the story for us. And Alicia, you have received dozens of emails with theories of what this sound could be. What are people telling you?
Well, it's not even 5 minutes following our first report. Emails came flooding in with suggestions of what these noises could be. In fact, our story reached people from as far as Oklahoma and Michigan offering their 2 cents.
Isn't that crazy, guys? Like, this is still a mystery to this point, and multiple different states, multiple different cities, and these are just a few of the clips that I decided to share with you guys. There were a lot more out there that I have found. I just don't want to overwhelm you guys with what I have found with these different clips. You guys get the picture. Let me know what it is that you think might be causing this. Now, I came across this interview, and it talked about the future of society and the future of currency, money. What is money? And ultimately, what we're seeing, these different problems, these tragedies, these these severe situations that are ultimately pushing us toward the goal of those who are at the top of this pyramid, right? So if you think of a pyramid, right, it's a triangular shape where at the top it's the pointiest, it's the smallest, and at the base, you've got a broad base at the bottom where the masses are. And so essentially, that's the hierarchical structure of our society and most societies, whether it's economically, socioeconomically. Throughout history, that's just how societies are built. And those who are at the top are in power. And so if you think back, okay, cash was introduced to our society. Previously, we're on the gold standard. And during the time when gold was used for exchange, this was like the evolution between just basic bartering and moving into more of a systemic way to trade goods and services for stored value. And so the stored value was represented by the gold. And so at some point in time, I want to say, and I don't know the whole history exactly down to the T, but I want to say it was somewhere around 1970, 1971, the US dollar came off of the gold standard. And during that time, it used to be where your dollar bill was the equivalent of a note that, if you went to the bank, you could retrieve the associated. You could take your note into the bank and the bank would give you a certain amount of gold because there was gold that was tied to the dollar that you held in your hand. And so that was when there was a gold standard and the US dollar was pegged to gold. Well, after roughly 1970, 1971, I want to say it was like Eisenhower or something like that. President Eisenhower, forgive me if I'm wrong. You guys can correct me in the comments down below. But at that point, gold was no longer associated with, or the US dollar was no longer associated with gold. And so this, if you think about it, this is actually kind of tying into this interview that I had watched. And I want to say it was on a London Reel or something. And the gentleman that was being interviewed was explaining how he was seeing this future for our society, ultimately to be controlled by the very few. And so how do you control the very few? Well, if you control the resources, if you can make society unbelievably dependent, and if you're in control of the resources that the masses are in need of, then you are essentially in control. Well, how do you do that? Well, you got to control certain necessities, control shelter, control food, control the money system, right? So if you pull away all of the gold from all of the people and tell them that, hey, money is worth the same amount of, the physical gold that you used to have. By the way, for the best way to invest in gold, there's a link in the description down below this video. But if you tell the people that the money, the dollars, the US dollars are equally of the same value of the physical gold that they're used to having, and convince them that, it's the same, the currency is the same as the gold, then there's a trust that is established. And then you can get away with having you can get away with having US currency not backed by gold. So that's first and foremost. And that was let's just call it phase one, just for the simplicity of this video. Then phase two is you introduce credit cards. And so the credit cards are introduced to make transactions easier, faster, more convenient. And more convenient will ultimately kind of be our demise in the future. And I'm guilty of this too. I use credit cards, Visa, MasterCard, American Express. And, by using these different payment gateways like PayPal and, you can't buy anything nowadays online without a credit card. So if you want to play the game, you kind of have to play by the rules. Now, good luck going to Amazon, Amazon.com, any kind of Shopify, e-commerce store, Etsy, Walmart.com, name your favorite retailer. Good luck trying to make a purchase, writing a check or paying cash. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So if you want to be able to take advantage of these conveniences, you have to use credit cards, right? Now, if you think about it, credit cards are kind of like the introduction to central bank digital currencies. It's allowing you to transact and conduct e-commerce through multiple different platforms basically infinite platforms. As long as they're willing to accept Visa, MasterCard, or American Express, you can make a transaction without actually handing over cash. Now, this is not rocket science. This is not new to anyone. But if you think about it, it is already a form of central bank digital currency. It's a digital currency that is already in play. And if you're one of the people who, rarely use cash, you're kind of already using a digital currency. It's not a central bank digital currency, so to speak, but it already is a digital currency of one form or another. Now, think about all the fires. Think about the railroad derailments. We've had so many different train derailments, left and right. The Ohio train derailment, actually multiple Ohio train derailments. You've had a number of different random fires hitting different food processing plants, droughts, and many people are saying that the weather is being controlled by HARP and a number of other different techniques that can ultimately control the outcome, the weather, and different things like that. But all of this could very well be a concerted effort to attack our food supply. And if you can attack and reduce the food supply down to a few large players, then if you're thinking about it from this perspective of this interview that I watched, from a hierarchical perspective, if you can reduce the number of businesses, all these different small businesses, it's hard to control them individually. All of these different smaller farmers, local grocery stores, if you can reduce them down to a few larger ones, then it's a lot easier to control the few than it is to control the many. And so is this a systemic attack to corral the masses into a few larger institutions that are likely already controlled by those at the top of the pyramid? It really makes a strong argument for that case. Now, I'm not saying that is necessarily what's happening or it isn't, but it certainly makes you wonder, and it would make sense if that were the goal. Now, if you were to fast forward, a lot of people have asked me, hey, are the banks safe? What banks are safe? Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I watch the stock market a lot, right? And whether you're invested in the stock market or not really doesn't matter. But if you use a bank, if you know someone who uses a bank and you care about them, you'll be paying attention to the stock market too. And so what I like to do is I like to keep a pretty close watch on different banking stocks that are on the stock market, because this can help you to understand which banks are stronger than others, right? So, I would wonder, what are the banks with the strongest balance sheets, right? What are the banks that have the weakest balance sheets? And so the banks with the strongest balance sheets, those are the ones that I would want to use. And I'm not even going to use just one. I'm going to diversify my investments. I'm going to diversify my assets. What we talk about on this channel all the time, this is a financial channel. And so we talk about how to diversify, and so with diversification, I'm talking about diversification of income streams, multiple streams of income. You got a job, you got a side hustle, you might have a business, you got passive income. Maybe you have some real estate investment trusts, some REITs that are paying you some dividend payments. Maybe you've got ETFs. We've talked about different types of ETFs that pay on a regular basis. There's high yield dividend ETFs. You got Vanguard ETFs, iShares ETFs, Charles Schwab ETFs. Many of these ETFs that we talked about on previous videos, I'm not going to go into all of them or really any of them on this video, but talking about different ways to create multiple streams of income is a hedge to diversify your income, especially in this society where we're seeing an unbelievable amount of layoffs in our environment, in our economy right now, and not to the extent of, say, 2008. It's not as bad as 2008, and it's certainly not to the extent of the Great Depression, which I've only read about. Obviously, I'm not old enough to have personally experienced the Great Depression. So if the recession of 2008 was worse than 1929's Great Depression, and we're not yet anywhere near as bad as it was in 2008's Great Recession, we're certainly not as bad off as it was back in 1929. But if we think about it, if you control the food, and if you look at the fact that the majority of people here in our country, in the United States, and I know I have viewers from Australia, I have viewers from Canada, from the UK, I'm getting comments, and comment down below where you guys are from. If you made it this far in this video, especially I really want to hear from you guys who are outside of the United States, because I'm getting more and more comments from you guys in other countries, and it's just amazing how much reach we're getting here. So I have to thank you guys for dropping a like for the videos, because that's the only way that is possible. So, but here's the thing. So you control the food by hypothetically reducing supply and reducing those who can produce. How many people actually produce their own food nowadays? How many people can go in the backyard and self-sustain and live off of their own land? Like, most people really can't do that, unfortunately. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily by design, but it is what it is. You know, if you live in the city, chances are your patio, your balcony isn't big enough to generate a harvest that your family could live off of, right? So it's kind of like, you know, people in the cities, if the goal was to reduce food and, you know, control people's food supply, those who are in the cities and or any place where you can't grow your own food, you're probably most vulnerable. But, you know, so think about, you know, control. You're the minority, but you're at the top of the pyramid. So you're at the top of the pyramid. If you can control the food by, you know, circumstances that happen, random airplanes falling out the sky and crashing into food processing plants, you know, suddenly, you know, 10,000 cows dying and, you know, millions upon millions of chickens being decimated or literally having to be destroyed as a result of an avian flu outbreak. You know, this definitely brings down the food supply. It brings down the food supply, and it drives up prices. And we can blame it on the recession. We can blame it on inflation. We can blame it on the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes. You can blame it on all these different things. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like moving us toward, to me, what seems like would be an advantageous ending point or an advantageous conclusion to be a ruler of the Hunger Games, right? If you can control the food, how would you control the food system? Well, you reduce the supply and reduce who can produce, right? And, you know, blame climate change on the emissions produced by farmers. And all of a sudden, you know, you have fewer farmers that can produce thanks to all sorts of federal government regulations that are passed, all in the name of a problem, right? A problem that was introduced that would allow them to implement a solution that gets them closer to whatever their ultimate goal is. So, you know, and of course, all this is hypothetical, you know, and I'm not, you know, talking about, I'm not trying to like put on my tin hat and make people feel a certain way, but it's kind of like, if you think about it, if the goal is control, well, control the food, control the money. If everything's digital and there's no cash accepted, if you go to a cashless society where there's no cash accepted anywhere, I mean, you guys have seen different videos where I'm showing up at different banks and I'm showing you, oh, wow, here's another bank branch that's closed, right? Here's another ATM that's been removed. It's kind of like the old telephones back in the day. Can you find a payphone today? Good luck with that, right? And so, you know, finding a payphone today is going to be the equivalent of trying to find an ATM in, say, another year or two, right? And this is just the direction that we're going. You go into a bank, if you can find a bank branch that's open, you know, whether it's Bank of America, Chase, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Truist, Citibank, Citigroup, whatever the case, if you can find a branch that's open, tellers are being extinct, right? So you used to walk into a branch and there's tons of tellers there. You could walk in, you could fill out a deposit slip. There's usually like a counter in the middle. When you walk into a bank, there's, you know, deposit slips, withdrawal slips, and all sorts of other slips, and you kind of fill it out. Then you walk up to the teller. greet them. Hey, how's your day? How's it going? Most of that's not happening anymore. Most of that's not happening anymore. In fact, a lot of the branches that I've been to, some of them don't even have anyone in there, which is crazy. Or maybe it's like one manager who's just kind of like directing traffic. And so it's like one or two tellers, and then there's like ATMs inside the bank branches. And so the pattern is that we're moving away from cash. And the evolution was, okay, there was gold, and then there was cash, and then there was the introduction of credit cards. And now we're kind of like, then you had cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency was introduced, and, it posed a threat by being a decentralized method of payment. But in my opinion, I think that a lot of people are really using crypto more as a way to invest their money, because if you think about it, most people are buying crypto. They're buying Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Shiba Inu coin, XRP, Ripple, name your favorite coin, Shiba Inu. They're buying these cryptocurrencies to make money. They're buying these cryptocurrencies as an investment in many cases. And some people are actually buying cryptocurrencies as a hedge against inflation, as a hedge against the dollar or any other paper fiat currency. But most people are actually not using these currencies as a way to make payment, right? So it's not, in my opinion, yet a viable way to pay. However, depending upon the direction of our economy, and that could change. That could very well change. So here's the thing, guys. That is the evolution of where we are right now. Now, come July, FedNow is supposed to be implemented, and this will allow transactions, banking transactions, payments, electronic payments to be made at the speed of light, blah, blah, blah. And there's a number of different benefits that are advertised as a result of FedNow coming online as of July of 2023. How does this really help us, me and you right now? I have yet to really be sold on how this actually helps us, because right now you can pretty much make payments pretty quickly using credit cards and ACH transfers through banks. Visa, MasterCard, American Express works just fine. I'm able to make payments to different companies, small business owners, entrepreneurs. I can make a payment to a guy who comes and, does plumbing work in the house. He's got his Apple iPhone 14 with him, and I can just kind of like tap to pay with my American Express card, and the transaction's done. So do we really need FedNow, or is there another reason why FedNow is being brought online? We've also seen multiple banks fail. SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, First Republic Bank. I think that's up in New York. You got Credit Suisse, which was a recent failure. So the question is, are these real failures, or is this a part of the plan? FDIC has stepped in to ensure that the underinsured banks, or underinsured depositors, were made whole, because, as you know, FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, only covers your bank account up to $250,000 as a single individual, or up to $500,000 as if you're married. If you have two Social Security numbers on that same bank account, I believe it's actually covered up to $500,000. But anyway, there's been a number of accounts that were in these different banks that were not fully insured, because let's just say you had $1 million in a single bank account and your bank went under. Well, if FDIC is only covering you for $250,000 of your wealth, then you just lost $750,000 in the blink of an eye. Thankfully, as far as I understand, everyone has been made whole. And so, these bank depositors weren't left holding the bag. But let's just say, that there's more banks that fail. And if the FDIC went in and insured people for more than what they had promised that they would insure for, right? If the FDIC was planning to insure banks for $250,000 per account, but they made good on more accounts, then that would mean that their theoretical balance that is allocated for bank bailouts, for lack of a better term, that would have been dwindled faster because of the higher expenditure needed to be able to save people who had more than $250,000 in their bank accounts. So what happens next if we see another series of bank failures, and maybe the banks are larger that happen to fail going forward? So this is just food for thought. But think about it. So we went from gold to cash to credit cards to cryptocurrency to Fed now. And ultimately, the goal is central bank digital currencies and wiping out potentially, who knows what they're going to wipe out. Certainly cash. Cash is on its way out. We've already seen coin shortages. Coins are pretty much worthless now, and I don't want to say worthless, but you see where I'm going. Like coins are becoming extinct. That's probably a better way to put it. And so ultimately, right? If you wipe out, we've already wiped out gold, right? For the most part. Now, of course, you can still buy gold today. There's a link in the description down below. And the cool thing is with that particular option, you could actually get the gold. You could actually get the physical gold. So that's pretty cool. But again, that link is down below if you guys are interested in that. But so they've already, for the most part, eliminated gold from our monetary system in terms of our day-to-day lives. Cash is on its way out. And it's kind of like, if you look at it, it's kind of like at the oldest monetary methods of payments are being phased out in the order that they were brought online almost, right? So gold was phased out. Cash was phased out. And so credit cards are still very, very popular. I don't know if I see those going away. But it would also kind of like tie into what the plan is, which is to go to a digital currency. So if you go to a digital currency, well, credit cards are already a digital currency, right? So that to me is in line. But even the plastic themselves, most smartphones are allowing you to no longer have to have a physical plastic credit card, a Visa, a MasterCard, or an American Express card in your wallet anymore. Everything's on the phone. And so if the goal is to control the people and everything becomes digital and there's no physical anything anymore in terms of currency, it would be a lot easier to just be able to press a button and literally eliminate people's ability to make purchases, because if everything is digital, it could all be controlled from a central location. And only those in power would be able to press the button to allow you to go to a grocery store and purchase food, go to the gas station, purchase gas, to make a mortgage payment, to give your grandkid or your children a birthday gift. Like, all of this would be monitored and ultimately permitted or denied, ultimately controlled by a central location. Your taxes, the IRS would literally be able to just make a decision in terms of how much taxes you owe and just yank it out of your account. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from being able to do that. And if I were someone who was at the top of a pyramid, these are things that would be in alignment with a single ruler control mechanism. If I were, if my goal were to control everyone, if I can get everyone to be dependent on these digital currencies, and then I can be the banker, the number one and only banker, I can control who can do what, who can buy what, and who can't. And if your social credit score isn't in good standing, well, maybe you don't get a chance to make a particular purchase, or, hop on a plane and fly somewhere because, you've already gone far enough. You've already taken enough trips based on whoever's making the ultimate decision. So these are just some things that I'm looking at that could make sense. So drop me some thoughts, you guys. Like, what are you guys thinking? What are you seeing, right? If you control the digital currency, then you can control who can eat. If you control the food supply, you can control the prices. So just some food for thought. Drop me some comments down below. Consider subscribing to the channel. Drop a like, and I'll see you guys on the next video.